Yeah, so I'm here to talk about UHD, and it's really the story about not doing UHD, actually, because, and I'll talk about a bit about that. So here today, Bo Benson, different solution architect, couldn't be present, but I'll just give him a short shout out. So who is DR? I will talk about who is DR, the problem, our solution, and then some questions. So DR is a public broadcaster. Probably everybody knows that. And we have a small population of about 6 million. We have a coverage in Denmark about 40% right now, and half of all our viewing is streaming, and a very broad spectrum of content. So the story about UHD really starts years ago with the story about HD, or the conversion from SD to HD in DR. And it all started with this huge project of DR moving to this new domicile and having a grand technology vision saying everything had to be world-class. And that is a very, very expensive vision to have. So all the facilities in DR was built to be world-class, from stationary phones that was still used at the time to network for everything was to be world-class. Of course, it also had to be HD. And HD, since everything had to be world-class, all production, everybody thought that their production had to be HD at the time. So that was including news, drama, everything had to be HD. And that was a huge cost for DR, and a kind of traumatic event for DR to go through this. And it didn't bring a lot of user value to be HD at that time on everything. Yeah, so some years ago, DR was in the same situation. Now it was kind of clear to DR that UHD wasn't something, it wasn't a fad, it wasn't 3D television, something that probably wouldn't be anything. UHD would be something that we needed to think about. And it was clear that the streaming market at the time looked like this, with weekly coverage. It was new players, they had new players, Netflix and YouTube. The greens are showing the services that did support UHD. So something was happening here. But we tried to do it in a different way, and in many ways, like the same thoughts that Madeline had about this. So how did we, as a broadcaster, transition to UHD, providing the right value for the users? What kind of things did we think about trying to suss out this? One thing was that the users, for the users, content is still king, right? And very few users will choose content based on whether or not it's UHD or not. They might choose a television based on it, but that's not what we're selling. We're selling the content, right? And as a public broadcaster, we can't just sell a different subscription or more expensive ads. So we had to do something else. We tried to look into, oh, this is very dark. So we tried to look into what it would cost to make a complete transition to UHD at that time. And yeah, it was very expensive. This is not readable at all, but what we try to look into is having a very large a view of the systems in DR. So trying to say pre-production and pre-produced content had a flow to on-demand distribution, and live content has a flow towards live streaming and terrestrial and cable. So that was the overall model we had. We could see that on our services, only 25% of the viewed minutes was from live streaming, and 75% of it was on demand. So that probably was the part we would want to look into. And what we started investing in was the very last part of the chain. We looked into upgrading our streaming platforms and transcoders. And that is also a pretty cheap part of this whole chain compared to everything else that you can buy in production systems and everything else. We looked into small changes to our planning and a QC to do this, and some very minor changes to our media asset management. You can see there's mentioned network here, but it's actually, we didn't do any changes to our network. So that is some work we're going on for some while now. And as I said, this is the story of not investing a lot of money into this. So for some years now, 1.5 years, we've been able to do UHD, but we didn't want to be public about it because we didn't want to create expectations for users that we will do this. Here we are now, 2022, and the market is very different now. There's a lot of more international players on our market, and almost all of them support UHD in different forms. And very few of them support live. That's only Viaplay and TV2 that has been lost here on this drawing. But it's very few of them supported for the live part of it. And most of them support these different services. So what are we looking into now? So we're still trying to pump the brakes here, but what we're going to do in the coming period is that we'll look specifically at fiction as something that we want to distribute as on demand, and we'll be able to have a ceiling around 100 hours of that, and both for 4K and HDR. And we'll look into the complete chain. It's of course super cheap to get that from external vendors, but we still have a large internal production, and some of the big productions we have might have value in doing this. So, and the other thing we're also looking into is even though live is small, we'll look into being able to do live events only as 4K, 50p. And of course, that will need to have changes to a playout system, to our broadcast infrastructure. But we're not looking into to change the terrestrial distribution of it, or having internal contribution from. It's not very visible for you guys, I think, TV trucks and OB vans. So that's not something we'll look into. So hopefully it gave a view into what we're thinking about right now. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much, Peter.